if nothing else, embrace it. Change happens. As I said before, I was designing for paper and such
Hmm.
before the internet happened. So, and honestly, as I say that again, I don't think I would have stayed with design if the internet hadn't happened or if I hadn't gotten into the internet. It was just nothing wrong with it, but I was just tapped out, I guess. I found talking to users and figuring out how to make something that they want a lot more interesting. So that was a big change. And then when mobile came, I had to adapt
Oh
to
yeah.
that, and tablets and
Yep.
so forth. So change happens. So right now, the change is AI.
You're listening to Stories from the Hackery, a podcast about the students, alumni, and community members that continue to shape Nashville Software School. NSS is the nation's first nonprofit coding bootcamp, where a person with aptitude and motivation can gain the skills needed for a career in tech. For more information, visit NashvilleSoftwareSchool.com. So I'm John Wark. I'm the founder and CEO of Nashville Software School, and also get to interview some interesting people from the community here on Stories from the Hackery. And today we've got an old friend, a colleague at NSS, and a generous supporter of Nashville Software School here to talk to us about uh, user experience design, user interface design, why she teaches, why she supports Nashville Software School. And that's Susan Culkin, who I've been saying for years, if Susan's not the most experienced UI UX designer in Nashville, she's one of a very small handful at the very pinnacle of UI UX design in Nashville. So I'm extremely happy to welcome Susan to Stories from the Hackery. And Susan, I'll ask you to give us your elevator pitch on who's Susan Culkin.
That's a good question. Thank you for the nice intro. So currently, I'm a senior product designer at Wilmington Trust, but I have over 20 years of experience in UX and product design. We didn't use those labels then, but I'd say my journey started in 99, evolving from art direction at a consulting firm to user centered design, and we were winging it as we went along. I still wing it a little bit. But yeah, I've had the opportunity to work with lots of different projects and lots of different industries. And um, that's part of the reason I like it so much.
All
The
right.
opportunity to meet different people. And for me, it's all about the humans.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, interesting. If I remember right, I think I've got this right. Your academic background was in graphic design, right?
No, it was an art history. So, yes, there were some
Oh,
design courses, but yes. And I do not advise the art history major.
hence the career in something else.
There
Yes.
you go.
All right. Or maybe it was maybe what I'm thinking of is sort of your first professional experience or early
Yeah,
professional experience in design was in graphic design, which
you're
makes sense because
absolutely
so
right.
many of people who are in UI and UX came from graphic
Yep.
graphic design, right?
There was no internet when I started.
Right.
So I
Yes.
did,
No, no
I did.
snide remarks from me about dinosaurs roaming the
Thank
earth or
you.
anything.
Thank you. I like to shock my students saying I was doing this before Google just to see their faces.
Just because they can't imagine such a thing.
Exactly.
And I know you did not start your career out in Nashville. You came to Nashville what 15 years ago now, roughly, I think.
Almost 2011. So
Yeah,
I'm
so what's your Nashville story? How did you stumble into town?
so moved my family here Partly because we always loved Nashville, but also it gives us a chance to be closer to relatives in Memphis. So
Ah,
that was a big reason for it. Um, I love my in laws. I actually really lucked out on that, but didn't want to move to Memphis.
so the in-laws would have been okay, but okay, got it.
Pretty much. I don't think I could get my husband back there either.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, my mother in law thinks I'm a hero because I got her husband to come back to Tennessee.
You got this close at least.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's a day trip.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
we have really loved it. And I have to say, Nashville embraced me as a freelance designer. It's kind of a corny word, but like it's such a great supportive town for getting work and getting introduced to somebody else. And I came from the Mid Atlantic region and worked in DC and New York, and before we came here, um, it's a very nice change.
yeah. The Nashville community, and we've talked about how great the Nashville community is
Hmm.
in terms of its how welcoming it is to new
Yeah,
talent, whether that's experienced talent coming from out of town or new talent kind of trying to start their career up in
yeah,
Nashville. We've always talked about it. I know we've had some other podcast episodes that sort of talked about community and
hmm,
we're we've still got some of that. We're still a little bit south. We're still a little bit small town, and
I agree.
and and I always attribute some of that also to the roots of the creative community in Nashville being grounded in music and
Yep,
really in songwriting, even more so than the musicians. But
I
in
agree.
both, new talent coming to town is the lifeblood of that world, right?
Yeah,
And I think that informs the whole creative community in Nashville.
I
It's
agree.
kind of always been my sense of it. And well, and heck, you and I got connected because you,
I was just
you
going to
were able to
say,
get plugged into new things once you got here too, right?
yep, startups, startup accelerators.
Well, so I'd like to talk a little bit about UI and UX
Hmm.
um, because I think while I think it's very important. I came out of the product side of the tech world before I
Hmm.
came to Nashville, which is where you know good design, UI, UX has kind of been present for many, many, many years,
Hmm.
at least supposedly. And but it wasn't as a present, in like enterprise IT, in
Right.
some other parts of the tech world. So maybe summarize for people who are listening and who may not
Mm.
know what are UI and UX. You know, how are they related? How do they
Yep.
contribute to the design of, let's say, a digital product, a software product? And how do they relate to software development and the sort of the broader subject of digital product design?
So this is an easy question for me because this is pretty much what we talk about on the first night in my class. so, so when people hear I'm a designer, they think I pick colors and fonts, and that's not untrue, but that is not what design is all about. So if we just start at design, that's really about observing and thoroughly observing and then shaping a solution. And then when we get into the more specifics of, if you think of UI is how it looks, how the product looks and attracts, UX, user experience, is how a product feels and functions. So if you think about UX designers designing a meaningful and relevant experience for the users, but also have to keep in mind what the business goals are, what their ultimate limitations are for business, and of course work with technology where there's limitations, but also every day there's also new stuff to learn to um, latch on.
Right.
So you think about UX driving the direction of the product, but UI is the first impression. It is the face. That user interface is the face of the product. And we have nanoseconds to capture somebody's attention now. There's so much out there. So if the person can't is having trouble navigating it, or they just don't like it, it looks sloppy, they're not going to trust it. That you're presenting the right message so the user knows what's going on is the UX presented in the UI. And actually, the analogy that I use in class is an architect. So let's say you want a new house and you meet with the architect, and the UX person is the architect here, and you tell them that you want a big house in the country, or you tell them all the things you want. What is your lifestyle? What do you want out of it? And do you have special? Are you a gourmet cook? You need a gourmet kitchen. You have little kids. Whatever your life is about, and you want to happen in that house, and then they go off and they design a solution for that. And that's where the developers and the engineers come in with asking, can we do this? We have this much money, we have this much time. Is there a material that can do this? And you work those things out and go back and forth with the business or the owner, until you've got an idea, a blueprint. And then you start bringing in the designer who's going to pick that style, that what speaks about you, that back to the example, if you have lots of little kids, probably don't want a lot of white furniture. You want for your lifestyle. So it all comes together. And you know, the home theater or the gourmet kitchen and all of those things are great, but nothing happens without the builders, the developers and engineers. So everybody's got to work together.
Okay. All right. So some analogies there to how software developers and UI UX designers
Mm-hmm.
have to work together. So I know I think there's a lot of misconceptions sometimes about the role of designer.
Still, yeah.
Yeah, still,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, and you've certainly run into way more of those than I have. So, what do you hear? What do you see? What do you experience in terms of misconceptions about what is UI UX? What is the role of UI UX? Where it fits in the process. How optional or not is it in building good product?
Good
Those kinds
question.
of things.
Yep. Oh, my major pet peeve is that UI and UX are interchangeable. They are two different things that work together, and there's definitely some overlap, no question, but they are two different principles. The other one is that you can add the UX, you only need it in the beginning, or you can add it on later. Not true. UX is an ongoing process. It continues throughout the product's life cycle, and also that your UX designer takes care of that. So yes, responsibility may fall there, but really a good product has everyone thinking about the user-centered design. Often developers have come back to me and said, "You asked me to build this, but it's 6 steps." I'm making this up. "I could automate this and reduce, make it only 4 steps." That's what we're trying to do because this would help the user. That is ultimately our goal. What's another one? Oh, that good UI means good UX. Not true. You can have some really beautiful, lovely screens, interfaces out there, but that doesn't mean it's going to be a good experience, that it can still fail to meet the needs or difficult to navigate. Yeah.
Right.
Um, Here, I thought about this when we were talking about the developers and the architect analogy. So there's two sides to this question that I know I've had differences of opinion with other designers about whether we need technical skills. I don't think we need to be developers. You may want to be. There's a few unicorns out there who can do both, but you benefit So the designer themselves benefits, but the product also benefits, is what I was trying to say, from just having the concept of the constraints and the possibilities. Um, so I wouldn't say we need to be expert developers, but yeah, I agree that we need to know some of it. And then, yeah,
No, go ahead.
I
Don't
was
let me
going to
cut you
say,
off.
no, I was going to say, and my ultimate eye rolling groaning is every, not every, so many people, especially startups, are quite sure they know exactly what the user needs. We don't need to talk to them. Yes, you do. They do not think about your product 24/7 like you do. Yes, you do.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So on that subject of, yeah, do UI UX designers need to be front end developers, or do they need to at least have some experience with front end development? And also the flip side of that, right? Do front end developers need to be designers, or at least have had some exposure to and experience
Yeah,
as designers? I think what you were saying was, yeah, it's really beneficial if the designers have an awareness of what
yeah,
it takes
awareness.
to build this stuff
Mhm.
and what the materials the developers will be working with is capable of.
Yeah,
Going back to your architect analogy, I may not have to be able to stack bricks or build
yeah.
a brick wall, but I've got to know what that brick as a material is capable of. How high can I build unsupported? How
Mhm.
how long is it going to take to put it together? I
Exactly.
need to have that awareness, right? And
Exactly.
that's kind of what I translated what you were saying
Mhm.
into.
I
What
like
about going the other way, right? So what
that.
about
Mhm.
developers? So, you know, good front end developers, how much do they need to understand of UI and or UX design, right? What's what need do they have?
I say, so there's the keeping the user in mind. I find, so just that user centered part of helps to align the team. This is what we're doing. This is our end goal. This is who we're designing for. So that helps just to have that mindset. But even when you get down to, the weight of the font that you're using or the color contrast, things like that, accessibility, things like that are front and center for a designer. But again, it's not getting built until the developers have their hands on the keyboard. So they're going to see it first. So knowing that the consistency from screen to screen, we can't have things moving around. You may like that color better than the one I gave you, but too bad. Well, actually, no, maybe not too bad. Maybe there is a reason. Maybe, I don't know. I can't think of it, but maybe, yeah,
Color blindness or something like
yeah,
that.
yeah, and just whatever. So speak up. So the developers should speak up to the designers, and vice versa, because there might be a compromise if nothing else. Um, I know developers, many developers I've worked with, just they say they don't care, and they're in. I'm going to say intimidated by that idea of having to be creative. First of all, everyone's creative in a different way. Just you don't have to think about it. But everybody wants whatever they're building to be used and for the user to be happy with
Right.
it. So
Right.
developers having some concept of that, how a user sees it, because majority of users aren't thinking about, wow, they must have done this in Python. They're not, they don't care. They care.
Yeah. Wonder if they used Flexbox when they laid this out.
Exactly. They don't care. They care if it does what they want it to do. That's what they're going to remember. So the more the developers have some of that mindset, the better.
Yeah. So it sounds like a big part of the battle, if you will, is the mutual appreciation
Hmm.
of the complementary nature of each other's roles.
Yep.
The architect's got to be appreciative of what the engineer brings to the party. The software developer needs to be, appreciate the role, responsibility, importance of what the designer does,
Mm-hmm.
and vice versa, right?
Yep.
Because, in the early days of the internet, before really UX became, I think,
Yeah.
appreciated, right? So
Yep.
we got a lot of UIs designed in Photoshop, and then the old freight, we
Oh
threw
my
it over
God.
the
Yeah.
wall,
Oh. Yep.
right? It's
Yep.
like, here you go, developers, have a nice day.
Oh my gosh.
And the
But
developers are like, this is beautiful. I can't code this,
yeah.
right?
So who cares?
So, so breaking down those walls, right?
Yep.
So that we've got an integrated team front to back.
Mm-hmm.
Because we know in software development, you got to do the same thing from the front end developers to the server side developer, right? So,
Yep. Yes.
and the designer's very much part of that iterative collaborative process, I think, right?
That reminds me of my first true internet design job. No more prints and all that. Um, was with IBM, and I in DC, and I joined the firm as my title was information designer, and I found out that the developers who their office was like 45 minutes away did not talk to the designers, all and vice versa. They hated each other, and luckily I was too stupid to or too busy really to know that they weren't speaking to each other, so I went and introduced myself to the developers on my team. I'm like, we work together. I didn't even know. And so we worked great. The project went smoothly and all that. And then there was a reorg, and I became the creative director pretty soon after that. And so that put me in a position to change this over the wall thing. And there was a lot of yelling on both sides. Both sides were
Oh,
not happy about
sure.
my
Yeah.
change. But then once we painfully got through the first project doing it that way, then those developers and those designers became the biggest advocate for working together, because in the end, we got it out faster. The client was happy. It was a win-win-win. But
Yeah.
there's some ego involved and
Oh,
all that
sure.
kind of stuff. But it worked out.
Oh,
They
sure.
still do it that way.
But, like you said earlier, you know, developers, yeah, they may get their back up a little bit
Hmm.
but ultimately, if you've got good developers,
Hmm.
they do want to deliver something that at the end of the day is going to get used,
Right.
right? The worst thing in the world is a project that just gets canned, right?
Exactly.
And you just
Yes.
feel like you've
Oh,
wasted all this time, right?
yep.
So I think that feeling that a developer gets when the product lands in the user's hands, and somewhere along the line in the early days, the user goes, man, this is great. This is so
Uh-huh.
much better. This is, right. This is such a big improvement over which loops us right back to what was the role of the UX designer in observing that user and those
Hmm.
processes and figuring out what's going to make it a better process. So,
Yep.
you have one of those successes and you can start sort of that virtuous spiral where things just keep getting
Hmm.
better, you know. So
I like that
anyway,
analogy.
well, so I think you said 99. You've been doing this for a day or two.
Yep.
So, one of the things we always like to talk about at NSS is how do you keep your skills up, right? On the,
Oh.
on the sort of lifelong learning aspect of being in and around any kind of tech field. And I think you mentioned a little while ago about, there's always, new stuff to learn and whatever.
Hmm.
So
Always.
how do you keep your skills current? How do you stay on top of trends? Do you have any
Yep.
go-to, designer websites? Are
Oh.
there, do you consciously design in some learning time on new projects? I mean, kind of what's your recipe for trying to stay up to
True.
date as much as any of us can stay up to date
Yeah.
on this stuff.
Oh, there's so much. There's so much, especially now. Um, I would say my number one way is teaching at NSS. But seriously, because I feel even more pressure to stay on top of things. So my students who are learning this to get a new job or improve their current job. So I want to make sure that I'm recent and on trends and tools and anything else we've learned. But I also learn from my students. We get all levels of some with some experience and they're just trying to improve their experience. Some developers who want to get some sense of design and all that kind of stuff. So actually, I always learn something from my students, whether it's just a better way to say something that I've been teaching that, if there's a better way to say something, I want to know,
Yeah.
or workshops that they've been in at work that another way to do things. So that's one sheet, which isn't really very helpful because everyone's not teaching, have a, but my ultimate plan or the way I do things is that to have a plan. There is so much going on. And I honestly don't know if I've always done this or if it's just now because there's so much out there. But have a plan. You can't be focusing on everything at once. So, what do you want to learn or be better at? So, I'll say, like right now, for me, I'm interested in AI, whether it's as great as it sounds and all of that kind of stuff. It's what's happening now. So I would be interested in learning how to design AI products. I actually love the day job that I have now. I have no desire for a career change, but it doesn't mean I'm not interested in learning. And there's nothing about using AI on the things that I'm working on right now. So it's not so much that I just want to be prepared. And I really believe, we've been talking about everyone working together. So you never know what you might learn that over here and apply it to something else. But the other thing I'm focusing on is basic stuff like Figma. So they have a conference every year that they call Config 2024 when you find out their newest features and all that kind of stuff. And quite frankly, I haven't had time to catch up on their latest
Uh-huh.
features. So that's on my list of making time to learn this cool stuff that they've added.
Including their AI features.
Yep, which there's a lot of news about. I have no opinion on it yet because I haven't had time. But hey, if it makes my job easier, I'll use it.
Well, so I'm curious. You mentioned generative AI and that is very much a here and now thing,
Yep,
right? In all of the career paths that we
true.
teach at NSS. Do you have a view yet on how generative AI is impacting the field of UI UX? I mean, I'll just throw out one example that occurred to me with these chatbots is we talked about you said earlier UI is the face of the
Hmm.
application. Well, wait, if the application's a conversational application,
As they should be.
what's the face now, right?
Yep,
So I'm just
voice.
curious about how far your view has evolved at this point, or if you're still sort of holding off opinions on how generative AI is impacting UI and UX.
Um, it may not be a well-formed opinion, but I have one. um, if nothing else, embrace it. Change happens. As I said before, I was designing for paper and such
Mm-hmm.
before the internet happened. So, and honestly, as I say that again, I don't think I would have stayed with design if the internet hadn't happened or if I hadn't gotten into the internet. It was just nothing wrong with it, but I was just tapped out, I guess. I found talking to users and figuring out how to make something that they want a lot more interesting. So that was a big change. And then when mobile came, had to adapt
Oh
to
yeah.
that and tablets and
Yep.
so forth. So change happens. So right now, the change is AI. So far, I like it for rapid prototyping. So there's one tool that I've tried a couple of them. UI Zard, I think I'm saying that right. That is an AI wireframing tool. And I'll also
Okay.
tell you, I can't use it at my job. I work for a bank. We are super secure, which is a good thing. I work for a bank. Um, but if it goes through all the security approvals, or if I do something else on the side, I would love to be able to use that tool in a discovery session, get users together, talk about the problem we're trying to solve, throw it in that AI wireframe. It's not going to be perfect, but then we have some page layout and workflow ideas to say, is this what you meant? And no, you
Yeah,
hate that? Okay, let's write on it and cross it off. We have pictures to work from. So I
yeah,
love
yeah,
the idea of it. It's helpful for guiding the conversations.
yeah.
I,
It's easier to react to something, right? Yeah, than it
exactly.
is. So yeah, okay, yeah, cool.
I have been
So
using it for placeholder text and editing content,
yeah,
asked it to write some personas, things like that.
yeah. But the point you raised there about, hey, it's a bank that we there's these all
Mhm.
these holes and concerns about security. We've done surveys now 2 years in a row of our alumni, um, who are out on the job saying, what are you doing with generative AI? Right? Are you generating code?
Mhm.
And we've heard all kinds of interesting feedback. But one of the things consistently is from a sizable percentage of that base is I can't use it at work. Right? Healthcare industry is that way,
Oh yeah, I bet.
which is same kind of concerns as banking. It's
Hmm.
privacy, it's security, it's all these enterprise concerns that, particularly in a heavily regulated industry like healthcare or banking or whatever,
Yep.
yeah, you're going to have so you know people can't even use it. So if
Mhm.
they're using it at home on side projects or on
Yep.
or in a purely learning environment. So yeah, I mean it's funny. I hadn't thought about that in the design world, but yeah, the
Yeah.
same concern because it's an LLM that's you're working
Yep.
with, and how many leaks are there in that boat? So
Oh, and I am not going to be the one to cause that. So if they say
yeah.
no, I'm not doing it. Oh goodness, no, no.
Well, so let me change subject a little bit. Let me pick up on something you said a minute ago,
Okay.
uh, maybe 3 minutes ago. No, you talked about the value of teaching as a way to keep learning, right? And one of the things I wanted to ask you about is why did you decide to teach at at NSS? Why did you decide to teach UI UX? I mean, I think it keeps me learning. It's a good way to learn more from my students, which I think it's true. We hear it from our software development instructors and stuff too. But you know,
Mhm.
was that all there was, or were there other things there, right? And had you taught prior to when you started
No,
teaching at NSS?
nope, never.
Okay.
So why did I start? Because you asked me. In the early days, we
Oh,
did
it's my
the.
fault. Okay.
It's your fault. We had the Design for Developers Day, to
Yeah.
get that concept in there, so they would be learning. Yeah, and then you were like, "Hey, could we make this a regular class?" And I was like, "I could do that." Um, and really, I had by that point started a couple UX departments in companies that didn't have them. So it was not that dissimilar from, a lot more detailed, but not that dissimilar from building it out and talking about, deciding on a process and all those types of things. So, um, but yeah, I always learn more. And it's harder to teach something than it is to do it. So I
Oh
actually
yeah.
think it makes me better at my job outside of NSS.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it deepens your understanding in a way that not too many other things do, right? So, all right. Well, so is there anything else? You've mentioned a couple things already. Is there anything else you enjoy, that you enjoy about teaching, the teaching process, the
Yeah.
interaction with the student? I mean, whatever, right?
Yes, and I didn't expect this, and maybe this just happens in Nashville. It's some my point of view. I didn't expect the community that it built. Like, granted, UX there weren't a lot of people around who knew what it was or what it meant when I started here. And um, yeah, but so yes, it's catching on outside of Nashville. So, more people coming here and all those things. But I don't know. I feel like NSS is part of the design community as well as the tech community in Nashville. And I didn't really expect that. I feel like it's the way it should be because we collaborate together, as we already talked about.
All right.
And I like the idea of adding talent to that, or contributing talent, building talent to that network in Nashville. I like that part and didn't expect it.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know, probably one of the more profound things that I've learned since we started the school is about the community dimension of what we do, right?
Yeah.
And Nashville is kind of an ideal place to
Hmm.
be able to cultivate that compared to, like I ran a couple companies on the West Coast, and it's just don't,
It's different.
it's a different mentality, right? And you know, I ran a big development team in Boston, and let's just say that, while there is a very active tech community in Boston,
Hmm.
it's different. It doesn't have the grassroots, aspect that we have that has historically been so strong in Nashville. COVID didn't do it any good, but I think it's still there.
I think it's
So
still there. It may
yeah,
be over Zoom and such for webcasting instead of at a coffee shop as much as it used to be, but I think it still happens.
okay.
Um,
So
yeah.
I'm curious, kind of curious what you've seen. You've taught UI UX at NSS in a couple different forms. You mentioned
Mhm.
the design for developers days, which I kind of almost forgot about because yeah, your first experience helping us was it was I can't remember if it was cohort 1 or 2, but it was very early on.
Yeah. I'm not sure if it was one or two either. I was
Yeah,
trying to remember.
where you put a workshop together where we kind of did sort of a two-step thing, but
Yep.
where you kind of had a case study. You came in, explained to the students, I think for about a half a day, what's
Hmm.
design, what's this all about, and then
Yep.
we sent the students out to do some field research, which was very cool. I think
Uh-huh.
didn't we look at the bike share program, or was that
Yeah,
what it
because
was?
is it e-bikes? It's not e-bikes. Yeah,
Not
it was new. It was new to Nashville. Those red bikes were new.
Yeah, and they weren't e-bikes back then. I think they were regular pedal bikes. But
Oh, that's right. Yeah, well, B-Cycle. That was the company.
yeah,
It
yeah,
was
yeah,
brand
yeah,
new.
right.
Yep.
And then the students put together their analysis of what they learned. They interviewed people at the bike stations and stuff,
And they
and
did
then
great.
yeah, and they presented their findings. And I
Mhm.
think we did this twice. And if I remember right, the second time we had was it the woman from the city that ran the program came to hear, or was
She was the marketing person for B-Cycle. On a whim, I was like, I'm going to tell them we're doing this. And so she came and listened to everybody's presentation.
yeah,
And I remember one group, we put the class in small groups. Their idea was something that B-Cycle was about to implement. Like, you are so spot on. You're going to see that in a couple months. So that was awesome.
yeah, I remember you were pretty happy after that cycle in
It,
class.
it was a great example.
Yeah, you also helped us create a curriculum that we tried to integrate into the full stack web development program and sort of do a design plus front end development, which is a class we ran a few times. But then you've been teaching UI UX for digital product design as a continuing ed class, basically professional development class for whew, several, let's just say several years now. I can't
Several
remember,
years.
but it's been usually 2 cohorts a year, not always. Some years it's been one, based on your schedule and it's like, geez, do you really want to have a life? Come on. So is there anything you've observed about the students you've had? Given most NSS students through any of our programs are really trying to facilitate career change, right? Or career acceleration. Um, what are kind of some of what are the most common kind of career paths or backgrounds, or who finds it easiest to make this transition? Maybe.
Ooh, who finds it easiest? I don't know about that, but I will say we get a lot of graphic designers who don't have
Right.
web or interaction experience, some
Yep.
artists. Get a lot of marketing people, which I thought was cool. And it makes
Yeah.
sense because marketing and UX can overlap a lot also because you're both interested in the user. It may be a different, point of view. Marketing, I kind of think of them as bringing the people to the door, and then the UX is going to keep them or engage them. So that makes sense. Marketing. Some developers, like we talked about. I get a lot of musicians because it's Nashville. We get a lot of music related professions. We've had some songwriters, couple teachers, which also made sense because that's a very human focused.
Yeah.
How can I help you? And
Yep.
looking for career changes. Yeah,
You
I
also had at
liked
least
it.
one welder at one.
Oh yes, I forgot about yeah. Oh, we've got all sorts of things. Yeah, we've had some songwriters, and I totally get the songwriters and the musicians and nothing else to have a gig, a side gig
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
they would
Right.
like the UX, UI to be their side gig and music to be the main gig. But either way, being able to balance it with the time.
Yeah. It ends up flipping over sometimes when
Hmm.
music's tough.
Yeah.
So
Oh my
it seems
gosh,
it's
yes.
something you have mentioned, but it is one that I feel like I've observed quite is photographers that we've had.
Oh yeah, that's true. Photographers I worry about when they join. No offense to any photographers out there. Um, they, I don't want to say struggle, but it's yes, you are used to looking, through a digital device and manipulating the digital on your screen, but it is generally static. It is not interactive, and it is your single point of view. We have a flow of things going. It's very important to think about when your user logs in. What are they going to see? When they click on that button, what's going to happen next? So sometimes it's tricky. I'm going to leave
Yeah.
it at that.
Yeah. So if you're into the art of the static image, that's
It's tough.
maybe not the best place to leap off from. If you're into maybe photography as a storytelling medium,
Perfect.
because
Yep.
that journey from sign in to, I mean, there's a story, there's a flow,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
That seems to me to be a better perspective to bring to
Yeah, I
things.
like that. That's a good way to tell it. I think that's part of the reason we get songwriters.
Oh yeah, good. There, particularly in Nashville,
Yeah.
that's storytelling. Thank you, Tom T. Hall. So,
It's
all right.
true.
Well, I want to ask you one other, kind of one other or one other area.
Okay.
You've also, in addition to teaching at NSS, in addition to kind of volunteering to mentor students and do all kinds of cool things, right? And
Hmm.
you kind of got your day job. You've also been a major supporter of NSS. You've
Oh,
donated
yeah.
a significant amount of money to NSS over the years. Your husband, your family. You've just been very generous. And why why do you choose to support NSS the way you do? And what's the advice you would give to somebody looking for ways to give back in the tech space?
Okay. The reason we give to NSS is I like helping people transform their career path, whatever they're trying to start a new life, improve the one they have. Um, it is a great skill to have, even if you end up, I don't know, managing a call center. There's things that you learn at NSS, and it's a great community, as a community coming up again. And quite frankly, my husband and I just believe a lack of money shouldn't prevent someone's ability to acquire new skills. If we can help, why not? And ultimately, it's almost kind of selfish because I want to have a community of good designers I can reach out to when I need help, or developers that I can count on. Again, I really do. This is going to sound a little hokey, but I really do believe we are interconnected. So a community filled with talented working individuals benefits everyone. So, we're not just investing in individuals, or it's investing in the future of the Nashville community, because we
Yeah,
can.
cool, cool, very good. Well, I've got to say, and I think I've said some of this to you before, but I'm going to say it here, and we're going to capture it forever, or however long podcasts last.
Yeah.
I really appreciate the support that you and Doug
Oh,
have provided to NSS. It's meant a lot, and I mean that, all of
thank
it.
you.
I mean your involvement as a teacher, your involvement as a friend, your involvement as a professional connection for our graduates, and absolutely not least the financial support that you've provided over the years. I mean, it's very meaningful to have individuals like yourself, Susan, who want to give back, who want to support, who want to support our students, because you're right, they are the future of our tech community,
Yeah,
right? So, uh, so
I'm going to
it me
retire
it
someday. We need to have
nah
somebody
yeah
else up there.
yeah.
Not anytime soon.
See if you and I race to the retirement finish line here. So
I'll take it back.
so I don't know how much of a hurry I'm in. So let me. All right, I'm going to
Yeah.
rapid fire a couple, three things here at the end.
Okay.
You and your husband have your own nonprofit
That's true.
that you guys are running. So
Hmm.
tell us about the Nashville Diaper Connection real quickly.
Yep. So when we moved here, my husband was at a volunteering event, and he was so impressed by the guy. He went up and said, "What can I do to help you?" And he said, "We need diapers." And Doug went off, "How hard can that be?" Well, it's very hard. There are no government subsidies. Food stamps, WIC, nothing covers diapers. And actually, today, by coincidence, the state of Tennessee is working with TennCare to help some people. So it's expanded. And honestly, my husband helped make that happen. Right now, yeah, yeah, a lot of work. It started. I helped him start it, but he's the one who drives it. Um, it started in our garage. The first year, we gave out 3,000 diapers, and in 10 years, we've given out 10 million. They give
Wow.
millions out a year. Yeah, and it just keeps getting bigger. But really, he's my. I'm very proud of my husband. He is the reason for its success. I tell people he used to be a uh, mortgage securities guy, so
Yeah, he
he,
was an investment financial industry guy, right?
yep. And we got to the point of he was doing both for a while, and then quite frankly, diapers, helping people, helping families was a lot more satisfying. But I think part of the reason he's so successful is that business mind and that nonprofit heart. He comes up with great ideas like diapers for diplomas, people who often drop out of college because they have children. You got to have diapers to go to daycare. They can't afford the diapers. So there's a scholarship that he has set up with some Middle Tennessee schools.
All right. All right. A couple more rapid fire ones. But
Okay.
yeah, Nashville Diaper Connection is a great
Thank you.
local, charitable organization, well worth everybody's support. So,
Thank you.
and just the idea of millions of diapers just sort of. Whew. So I'm assuming you wanted to be a UI UX designer when you were growing up, right? That was probably first.
Oh, if I had known the internet was coming, my world would be different. No, I wanted to be a glass blower.
I
I
was going to
still,
ask you about the glass blower thing. So
I
that
still do.
that comes from a long time ago. So that, I mean, that's something you've been into for a long time.
Yep, long time. I can't tell you where, but I know, excuse me, I do remember seeing a glass blower. I was like, oh my, when I was a little kid, like on a field trip, like a school field
Yeah,
trip or
yeah,
something,
yeah,
or
yeah.
vacation. And I just thought that was amazing that you can take this sand, a certain kind of sand, and stick it in that heat and, you know, come up with these amazing, you know, sometimes works of art, sometimes functional. I just love that. And I also love the way glass magnifies color. It's
Uh
not like
huh.
anything else.
Yeah, yeah,
There's a quote. I'm honestly not sure the artist that said this, and I'm probably going to screw it up. Julie or Tosa, a glass artist, talked about the rose window in Chartres Cathedral in
yeah,
Paris,
yeah, yeah.
and about what other medium can you take a 1 inch square of red and see it 300 feet away?
Mm, mm-hmm.
So, so
Cool. Yeah. So do you do any creative work with glass art today? Do you blow or glass or
well,
anything?
not lately, but I have. I have actually. I'm looking at, or behind me is a really large, heavy paperweight. Like I could kill somebody with it. It was the first thing I ever made, and like most first things, it's a little clunky, but it reminds me that I can be creative just outside the digital world, and I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just fun.
Working with atoms instead of bits. So,
Exactly.
well, that's cool because yeah, it's a funny coincidence. But yeah, glass art has always been one of the things I've always been fascinated by, and I'm not to create it, but
Yeah.
my wife's given me a couple of paperweights from Corning,
Oh yeah.
some of the artists that show up at the Corning Museum, which is fantastic. And then I used to get to Seattle a lot on business, and Seattle's a
Oh.
Seattle Tacoma because of Chihuly, and
Mhm.
but I think even before him, that's a big glass art town, and so there's always cool stuff in the galleries to look at and pick up. So, well, on that note, uh, Susan, thank you so much for
Fun.
joining us today. I really appreciate it. To all of you who are listening, thank you for listening. You can find any links mentioned in today's podcast in the show notes below, and hear more insights like these when you visit NashvilleSoftwareSchool.com and check out our other podcasts and our other stories from the Hackery. Thanks.